Welcome to episode number 38 of Talking Mopars. On today's show, we have Project Car of the Week, High Performance Parts Listener Stories. And I wanted to talk about an event that I attended 3 years ago, and that event was the Ben Snobar Collection Auction. I often think about that auction, and I realize that I'm probably never going to get a chance to attend another one quite like it. And I've never actually spoken in depth about it and what my experience was like, not only attending the auction, but taking part in it. So without further ado, if you are a Mopar enthusiast, then you are in the right place. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into the best Mopar enthusiast-driven podcast on planet Earth, and I'm your host, Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and this is Talking Mopars.
You're listening to Talking Mopars with the Mopar Hunter, your direct connection to all things Mopar.
Hello again, my friends. We are back for another exciting episode of Talking Mopars, and it's been a long week. You know, I let a car slip through my fingers, and I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt, to be honest with you. I ran across a 69 Dodge Dart for $500. Now, I already have a 69 Dodge Dart. It's in the garage, but here's the thing. It needs a lot of parts, and, you know, I have alerts set up on certain apps that alert me when cars that I'm interested in pop up on them. That's a little Mopar hunting trick for you. If you don't know about this, on certain apps on your phone, you can have alerts set up when certain cars or certain makes of cars pop up. So it kind of gives you a quick head start on other potential buyers. So I have a lot of alerts set up for different things. I won't give away all my secrets, but recently, a 1969 Dodge Dart Swinger popped up on OfferUp for $500. Now, this car had been wrecked in the driver's side quarter panel, but it had a lot of parts that I could have used on it, a lot of hardware and, you know, little things that I really needed. It was $500. Now, in my head, I'm breaking it all down like I'd spend way more than that if I were to just buy all these parts individually at swap meets or on eBay. And here's where trying to get the better deal got the best of me. I offered the guy $200. And, you know, he said, "Oh, the best I'll take is $400, which I was willing to pay. But here's the thing. I wasn't just going to let him get away with that. That's stupid me. I know what you're thinking. You're like, why didn't you just take the car? I know, but I really wanted to get that thing. I really wanted to pay $300 for it. Okay, so I offered him a couple $100. He said no. He said $400, and I sat on that for a while. I wanted to see how this thing played out. I wanted to see if maybe I waited a week and see if anybody else bid. And someone else bid. I don't know what they paid for it, but I should have taken the $400 offer, or at least just said, hey, $300 right now. You can get rid of the car, make your wallet a little fatter, and I can make my driveway a little fuller. But instead, I waited, I hesitated, I gambled, I lost. That's what happens in this game. And, you know, sometimes it's not all about getting the best deal. You know, $400 wasn't a bad deal. $500 wasn't a bad deal. It had a lot of usable parts on it. That's another problem. I should have went and looked at it. I would have been able to get a better idea of what I was getting myself into, but I didn't. So now I'm a little depressed. You know, part of the problem is I live in a neighborhood with an HOA. If you don't know what an HOA is, it's a homeowners association, which means all these jokers get together and they see something they don't like, they're going to complain about it. Thankfully, they never complained when I had my blue truck out in the driveway, and, you know, they don't complain when I'm working on my cars or anything like that, but the thought still crept in my mind because the guy was willing to deliver this Dart because he lives in my city. So I was like, okay, well, my problem is always trying to figure out where I'm going to put these cars. And then as of late, I finally realized that I don't care what my HOA thinks because I'm a responsible guy. You know, if I were to bring home a car, I know it's not, you know, the most pleasant thing to look at. I'll keep it covered and I won't throw a blue tarp over it. I'll make sure that tarp is brown side up. Or I'll just throw a car cover on it. But I hesitated, I lost, and, you know, I was going to have him bring the car here, and I was just going to buy an 18 pack and bring some buddies over, and we're going to break this car down. I was going to take every single part that I could either use or sell. Now, in my mind, I know I'm going to have to explain to my wife why I brought home this piece of junk. Because in her eyes, think about it. You bring home this old car and it's wrecked. What is he going to do with that? She'd probably think. I had a plan. And, now that plan will never be because I hesitated. So, folks, here's the thing. If you're looking at a car and you have the money, but you're trying to get the best deal, sometimes that's not always the best way to go about things. Especially if they counter offer your first offer and you're like, okay, yeah, I'd pay that. Well, then pay it. If you want the car bad enough, you'll pay it. Apparently, I didn't want this one bad enough, and now it's gone. So whoever got it, I hope you're using it to bring another one back to life, or maybe even bring that one back to life. It had some potential, but like I said, I never went and looked at the car, so I don't know what it looked like underneath. But I can assume that it was in pretty decent shape, other than the damage on the quarter panel. But, you can't win them all, and now I'm just going to have to go hunt for another one. So that's all right. I probably won't find one as cheap, but that's okay. I'll learn to live with my decisions. What are you going to do? So that's my depressing week. I hope some of you out there managed to save a Mopar or two, or managed to work on your own Mopar. Speaking of which, I need to get out in the garage. I really have been procrastinating on my projects, and I sit here and I preach on my soapbox all the time about get out there, work on your projects, blah, blah, blah. And I haven't been doing it. I've been working on this podcast. I've been working on this new podcast studio, which is 90% complete. And I am really happy with it. It's not $1 million studio or anything like that, but it's my studio. I threw it together for a few $100 and, I think it's going to get the job done. And I think this is going to work for me for the next few years while I continue to build this podcast and hopefully, keep growing this thing. So if you're listening to this right now and you haven't told anybody that you know about this podcast that is a Mopar addict, come on, if you're listening to a podcast about Mopars, let's just go ahead and call a spade a spade. You're a Mopar addict. I am too. It's okay. We can be Mopar addicts together. And that's why you're here listening to me talk about Mopars, right? Do me a favor. Tell your Mopar addicted friends about this show. And then do me another favor. Tell me your Mopar story. Here on Talking Mopars, we love to share stories. Mopar stories are what fuels this hobby. You can't go to a car show without hearing, 100 different people telling stories. That's just the way this works. That's what car culture is. It's cars, it's stories, it's good times. And that's what we have here on Talking Mopars. So send me your Mopar story if you haven't yet. And if you have sent me a story in the past, send me an update. It's been a while now. We've been doing this podcast for nearly 9 months. So, I imagine if you've been working on cars, you've been making some progress on your projects. Send me an update. I love that kind of stuff. And I want to hear news stories too. So if you're out there listening and maybe you've been listening for a while and you're like, I don't know, Chris, I really can't write. I'm not really good at typing out stories and I don't want to write you a book. That's okay. You can call me on my voicemail, which is 209-28-MOPAR. Leave me a voice message. I'll play it on the show and we'll chat about it. Or if you're old school and you want to send me an email, you can do that at chris@talkingmopars.com. Gosh, I've been chatting for a while. I've been talking your ear off. So, you know what? Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's get this show on the road. This week's project car of the week is actually a truck, and it was posted Saturday, June 27th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Here is the ad. 1977 Dodge D100 Stepside, $5,500. Arnold, Missouri. Nice survivor from the 70s. Solid truck. Rebuilt 318 V8 4-speed. Power steering, power brakes, AC, adventurer trim, thousands of dollars in mechanical receipts. Suspension, brakes, etc. Good tread on Michelin tires, runs good, shifts good. Title status is listed as clean, condition is listed as good. Alright folks, let's talk about the elephant in the room first, and that's that the seller called this a stepside. But in the world of Mopar, we call our stepside trucks Utilines. There's no such thing as a stepside Dodge. If you say the word stepside and you're referring to a Dodge truck, technically that's incorrect. They are referred to as Utilines. So don't be surprised if you run across a Mopar purist who says, whoa, 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 Only Chevys are stepside, son. Those are Utilines. There's Utilines and swept lines. There's nothing else. That would be technically correct. So this Utiline Dodge is a 1977. And if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that this truck falls into the category of tin grill Dodge trucks. Now, tin grills are the affectionate name given to these trucks by my friend Paul from Tin Grill Dodge Trucks on Facebook. It's a very large Facebook group dedicated to 72 to 1980 Dodge, Plymouth, and Fargo trucks, and Ram Chargers and Trail Dusters and all that fun stuff. So as long as it's a 72 to 80, we call those tin grills. Now, there is a huge controversy over the name, but you know what? Screw it. They're tin grills, okay? So tin grill Dodge trucks are very cool, and in today's market, everybody wants a C10. Now F100s are getting crazy, but these Dodges, I hope they don't get crazy because I really like these trucks, and I'm starting to see the prices come up on them. So I won't preach too hard about these trucks, but I will say that if you're a Mopar guy and you're also a truck guy, they make great hot rods. You can lower them, big block swaps, modern Hemi swaps, but I just don't see these trucks getting the amount of love they deserve in the aftermarket. But that's slowly changing. Recently, Holley released a full modern Hemi swap kit for this thing, and I'm really excited to see the kit. Put the kit in my hands. Hey, Holley, put the kit in my hands. I want to see this thing because I've been wanting to put a Hemi in my 76 Dodge D100. So I have the Hemi, I have the truck. I'd like to make it happen. I want to see this kit from Holley because that's a big step in the right direction for us tin grill guys because, like I've said, there's really not that much aftermarket support for these trucks. So hopefully that changes. Hopefully they start repopping these grills because these grills are like gold out there. If you find a dent-free tin grill, be prepared to spend some money. It's not uncommon to see these grills go for upwards of $1,000 or more if they're NOS perfect condition ones. You can get a used hammered one for like $30, but unless you're really good with tin work, then you're left with a dented grill. I have 3 dented grills right now. The best one that I have is on my truck, and to be honest, I really just need to pull it off and do a little body work to it just to kind of hammer out a couple of the big dents. But these trucks are really cool. They make great projects, and they're still reasonably cheap. This one's $5,500, so it's not the cheapest truck out there, but it's pretty solid. The cool thing I like about this truck is that it has the Buddy bucket seats. Now, if you've ever seen a Little Red Express or a Warlock, you'll see that inside those trucks and adventurer trucks, they have an option for these cool seats. Basically, they're 2 low back buckets, and in the middle is a little buddy seat that you can lift up and have someone ride in the middle. Or you can set it down, and it works as an armrest. I think they're really cool. It's my favorite seat in all these trucks, and it may be even my favorite seat in all of Mopar, but this one just happens to be a lighter color, like a white or a cream. Now, that is pretty rare. I don't see that very often, and I see, every single one of these trucks that comes on Craigslist, I see and I check out, unless it gets sold before I get to it. But, it's not too often you run across this seat, and this one has the white. So it's a yellow truck with the white interior, and, it needs a little cleaning up. The door panels are white, and it's just a cool color combination, and it's a Utiline. So that makes it cool in my book. It is a V8 4-speed truck, so that's awesome, and it runs and drives. What more could you want? It would make a great starter Mopar project, especially if you're a truck guy or girl. If you like trucks, this might be something you'd like to get into. And the tin grill community is growing. It's getting bigger, and people are really starting to take notice of these trucks. So get one now before they get too unattainable. Now, there are some companies that make sheet metal replacement parts, so rust damage isn't too big of a factor, but these trucks did have rust problems, and they did have some minor electrical problems, but nothing that can't be fixed. So, maybe you're looking at muscle cars and you're just like, I'll never have a Mopar because I can't afford them. Well, here's a $5,500 Mopar that is not only cool, but I will guarantee you this thing will raise in value so long as it doesn't get into any worse shape than it already is. I think these trucks make great projects, and I'm predicting that they're just going to get more popular as time goes on. So we'll see how that goes. But, I decided that it was time to get another D100 or another tin grill on Project Car of the Week. So that was Project Car of the Week. Someone needs to get this truck and save it. No Mopar left behind. Now, typically, this is the segment of the show where I talk about high-performance parts, which is my creative little nickname for Mopars that have played parts in movies or on television, anywhere but on the street in real life. So, music videos, cartoons, movies, anything like that. If a Mopar's been in it, I'm probably going to eventually talk about it as long as I know about it. So maybe there's one you haven't heard me talk about yet. Feel free to reach out to me and let me know, hey, Chris, don't forget about the blah, blah, blah car. Or have you ever heard of the blah, blah, blah car in the blah, blah, blah movie? You know what I mean? So if you know of something, hit me up. I love taking your suggestions, and it helps guide the show. If you want to hear me talk about something, just reach out to me and let me know that that's what you want me to talk about. And I will either get to it soon or get to it later. But I want to make sure that people understand that this podcast is your direct connection to all things Mopar. And when I say that, I'm not just saying that to be cool. I will talk about any Mopar. You want me to talk about PT? Is there a guy out there who collects PT Cruisers and he's just a diehard PT Cruiser guy? I'll talk to him. I'll talk to anybody that's a Mopar enthusiast. If you're enthusiastic about Mopars, reach out. So this week's high performance part is actually going to coincide with the listener story this week because the listener brought it up. This is Grant from Iowa calling back again. Take it away, Grant.
Hey, Chris, it's your buddy Grant calling from Iowa again. I really enjoyed the first couple dozen episodes of the podcast. Just really enjoyed the DIY Hemi guys and just all the other content you've been providing. Really inspired me to get back to work on my W150 again. I got a notification that I rolled it into the shop a year ago, and I hadn't touched it since, so I figured it's time to get my butt in gear. I tracked it down. The issue somewhere in the wiring. I think it might be my ignition switch. I don't know, but I'll keep working on that. One thing I want to mention is you brought up in a couple podcasts ago that you were looking for a die-cast model of the wing car from the Cars movie for like one of your kids or something. So I guess my question was like, have you ever collected like die-cast cars or ever had any interest in it? I know I've been doing it for over a year now. I mean, it's a little weird, being 25 years old, hanging out in the toy aisle at Walmart sometimes, but it's kind of cheap and fun and just something I enjoy doing. One question I have for you about it, whether you've done it or not, I don't want to nerd out too much, but they make a car. It's called a Roger Dodger. They've been making it since the 70s. And it says that it's a Mopar, and if you look on the Hot Wheels website, it'll tell you what the car is based on. If you get a chance, I want you to take a couple looks at this car and tell me what Mopar you think it's based off of. I have my theories. The website says one thing, and I don't know. I think I would argue if I had a chance to talk with somebody about it. But anyways, just really enjoy the podcast. Keep doing what you're doing. Oh, and one car you should talk about, the Bluesmobile from the Blues Brothers. One of my favorite movie cars of all times. Just love to hear if there's any other info about that you could dig up. So anyways, keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep listening in, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for calling in, Grant. You saved me a lot of trouble because you gave me a couple things to talk about. One is your W150. I am so happy to hear that I may have had a little part in inspiring you to get back to work on it. That's awesome. I love hearing those stories. I know there's a lot of people out there like me that have projects in the garage, and you let life get in the way sometimes. Sometimes you just have to force yourself to take some time to get out in the garage, get out in the yard, wherever your car's at, go work on your car, even if it's for an hour. Get that motivation back. But very cool that you got remotivated and, you're getting back to work on that thing. So keep me posted on that project. As far as die-cast cars, I actually do collect them. I'm not a crazy collector or anything like that, but there was a good year where I really went crazy. I tend to lean towards the M2 machines. I really like those. I like the Johnny Lightnings. I like Auto World stuff. I like the more realistic stuff. Now, Hot Wheels are cool. If I see a cool Mopar Hot Wheel, I'll buy it. But for the most part, I like the more realistic looking stuff. I really like 1/18 scale die cast, but they're so expensive. But there's a couple out there that I have my eye on that, they're a little pricey, but they are so cool. And hopefully I'll get a nice little collection of those going. I have a few right now, but the problem is I need a display case because I've been putting them on bookshelves and stuff, and I want to show these things off. I think they're really cool. And I totally understand what you mean by being I'm 35. I'm sitting in the toy aisle or wherever I am. And I'm like, okay, well, feel like a dork, but that's okay. Embrace the nerdiness, buddy. But yeah, I collect diecast. And last summer, I learned a really cool trick to finding cheap diecast. And that's to avoid the internet and go to local antique malls, because people tend to put these die-cast cars in antique malls. I don't know what it is, but I've seen some really cool ones for reasonable prices, not the $100 or $150 ones that you see on eBay, but I also see them locally on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or OfferUp, and sometimes they're a little expensive, but if you go to like thrift stores or, like I said, antique malls, that's a pretty fun resource to go hunt for die-cast cars, or even, Hot Wheels and stuff like that. But I love antiquing. I love going to the antique malls and stuff like that, and antique shops, and just browsing around, because you never know what you're going to find. And sometimes you run into some really cool automobilia, so keep your eyes peeled, and it's just another fun way to hunt for car stuff. As far as the wing car goes for my daughter, yes, I did get a few of them. And shout out to Paul. Paul, I know you're listening. Thank you very much. She loves them, and I love them too. Paul is a listener to this show, and he's become a friend of mine. And he actually heard me talking about that and sent me a little care package for my daughter. So she's got plenty of number 43 wing cars now, and that makes us both very happy. So yeah, I do collect diecast. Not as much. I went on a binge there for a little bit, and then I realized I've got nowhere to put these things. I've got, and I'm not the crazy guy who, is a super collector. I'll pull them out of the package. I don't care. To me, it's not about how much they're going to be worth or anything like that. I like to pull them out and put them on display. So when I get a nice display case, I'd like to have it lit up and all that fun stuff. And I wish I could afford one of those old Mopar like dealership display cases. Those are really cool, but they are really expensive. So if anyone out there wants to donate one to Talking Mopars, PM me and I'll send you my address. But yeah, so I'm going to get a display case here pretty soon, and then hopefully get all my cars, on display, because they're pretty cool. I tend to lean towards wing cars. It's hard for me to resist a cool wing car if I see one, but any cool Mopar, and I'll probably snatch it up if I see it. I actually had to stop going to like Hobby Lobby and these craft stores. My wife is pretty crafty, and we go to these craft stores, and then I realized that, they have, die casts, and the nice ones too, the M2 machines in like the model areas, like where the toys are in the model cars. And it was like a little honeypot of cool cars that were hard to find. And that well dried up pretty quick. So I decided that I was spending way too much money on those things, because I'd walk out of there with 5 Mopars and be like, all right, cool. And then they're pretty expensive for little cars. They're not 99-cent Hot Wheels. But yeah, so I guess I am a little bit of a collector of die-cast cars, but I'm leaning more towards the 1/18 stuff now, because I like the details, and they're a little bit more expensive, but they take up more room, so I don't have to buy as many. As for Roger Dodger, you did mention Roger Dodger, and I did want to talk about that, because just looking at the car, it reminded me of the funny car era, and like the original funny cars. And I took one look at it, and the opera windows gave it away for me. It's a mid-70s Dodge Charger. Hands down, that's the only thing it could be. And looking at the shape of the body, I'm like, yeah, 73 Dodge Charger. And as it turns out, I wanted to do some digging and see, was it inspired by something real, blah, blah, blah. And it was actually inspired by a 73 Dodge Charger. So, the styling cues on the car kind of give it away. Especially what gave it away for me, like I said, was the opera window. The 3 little slots. They stick out like a sore thumb, and then just looking at the shape of the car. So that's what I think it is. I'm curious to see what you think it is, Grant. Do you think it's a 73 Charger, or do you think it's something different? Because, I guess it could be interpreted a couple different ways, but, the 70s were an interesting time. So I see a 73 Charger. I'm pretty confident that's what it's based on, but you never know. Now, getting into the Blues Brothers car, that's actually a fun one, and it's on my list to talk about. I don't know very many secrets about the car, but what I can tell you is that it is a police package 1974 440 powered Dodge Monaco. They used 13 different cars for the Bluesmobile, and all of them were former CHP, California Highway Patrol cars. They all were dressed to look like former Mount Prospect, Illinois patrol cars. And the movie actually set a world record in its time for the most cars completely destroyed in one movie. They destroyed a lot of cars. Now, thank God they didn't choose, a Charger to be the Bluesmobile, because that would be a problem. We can't, the Dukes already messed enough of those things up. We didn't need the Blues Brothers to mess more up. So thank God they used Monacos, but they actually set a record for most cars destroyed in a film until, 98? And that's only because the sequel came out and they destroyed even more cars in the sequel. So it was a record beater. It beat the record and then it got beat again. But definitely a police-equipped ex-California Highway Patrol Dodge Monaco. So hopefully that satisfies you, Grant. Cool car. And definitely a legend when it comes to Mopar movie cars. So that was High Performance Parts. That was Listener Stories. And that was a little conversation about die-cast cars. I know a lot of you listening probably collect die-cast. And, it's cool. It's relatively inexpensive. And, if you have kids, it's something you can bond over. So I am 100% for die-cast cars. I think you should start buying die-cast cars for your kids as soon as they come out of the womb. And that's what I did. I had a satin pink Roadrunner A12 replica car ready for my daughter when she came home. It was right on her shelf, and she still has it to this day. So hopefully that car inspires her. Hopefully the strip weathers from Cars inspires her. And, there's only so much you can do as a dad, but I hope that she has the Mopar bug like her old man. That's going to be a lot of fun. But very cool. I'll stop talking about toys now. Let's get into the auction that I attended 3 years ago, the Snobar Collection. All right, folks, here's the story. 3 years ago, around the end of June, I got wind of an article on Roadkill, the website, and it was about a local auction happening in Washington State, and it was a private collection, and the guy's name was Ben Snobar. Now, I had heard this name before, but I had never personally interacted with Ben, and I was really intrigued because this guy, he's a local legend. And anybody in the local Mopar community that's ever had a car that needed parts, you knew who Ben Snobar was. He was just one of those guys who just, everybody knew who he was. I didn't. I had heard his name, but I had never met the guy. I had never bought parts from him. I've never sold him anything. But everything I had ever heard about him was good. I just heard he had a lot of stuff, and that, like it says in the article, the Roadkill article, it says, he was always willing to sell something. And everybody that I know that has met him bought something off of him. So that says a lot. So a lot of people saw the pictures from the auction, and a lot of people were, saying what I probably would be saying is, gosh, why would you hoard all that stuff only to, pass away and not get to do anything with it? And I don't think it was about that at all. I think it was just Ben really liked Mopar stuff. He liked cars. He had more than just Mopars there, but I mean, let me tell you this. I read the article and I was like, I'm going to this thing. I don't care what it takes. So I took the time off work and I went down there for the preview and to attend the auction. And I made the commitment that I was buying something from this auction because in my mind, I didn't believe that I was going to get another opportunity like this to attend a crazy private collection auction. And, especially one of this caliber because it was so much Mopar stuff. And, I didn't quite grasp how much Mopar stuff Ben had. Because, like I said, I didn't know Ben on a personal level. Other people did. But from what I had always heard, he was the guy to see, at least in the Northwest. Now, I started doing a little digging and learning what I could about what was at this auction. And I previewed the catalog online from the auction company. And I was just amazed at how much stuff there was. It's hard to put into words how much stuff Ben actually had. And, I looked through the catalog online and I knew I had to go and I knew I had to come home with something, a souvenir. I wasn't going down there to buy anything huge. I just wanted a souvenir. I didn't care what it was, but I wanted to pick something cool that I think was in my ballpark because in my head, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me and I wanted to treat it as such. Am I ever going to run into another private collection auction like this? Maybe, but there's no guarantees. So I wanted to make sure that I made the best of this trip. And, I went down there with a couple $100 in my pocket or a few $100 in my pocket. And I get to this place. Okay. And it's crazy. It's a madhouse. I'm thinking private collection. How many people really know about this? That was the dumbest thing I've ever thought. Everybody knew about it. And there was a lot of people with some deep pockets there. So I don't know if I can even put into words just how many cars Ben had. Okay? So the best thing that I could do to kind of give you guys an idea is to list them out for you. And the list is crazy and it sounds nuts. Okay? And this is just the Mopars that he had. He had some Chevy stuff, he had some Ford stuff, but he had a lot of Mopar stuff and parts. I mean, the guy could have started a business, and he did have a business. He had shakerhood.com, which is now run by Tom from Rocket Restorations. And Ben could have ran a whole nother business just in Mopar parts, and, the place was insane. Now, some people that have attended probably, didn't think it was that big of a deal, but it was the craziest thing I've ever seen as far as an auction because it was the only one I've ever attended. So I have nothing else to compare it to. But let's just run down the list of cars that were on Ben's property, okay? Let's start with Chryslers. He had 2 Chrysler PT Cruisers. One of them was a convertible. 3 Chrysler LeBarons, and 1 a convertible. He had a 96 Chrysler Concorde, okay? Now, let's get into the Plymouths. He had a 59 Plymouth Savoy, a 63 Fury, a 64 Fury, a 64 Savoy, a 64 Fury, a 64 Fury, a 65 Belvedere, a 65 Satellite, a 66 Satellite, a 66 Belvedere, a 67 Satellite, a 68 Satellite, a 68 Plymouth Barracuda convertible, just a random 64 Plymouth, a 69 Plymouth Barracuda, a 70 Duster, 71 Plymouth Satellite, 72 Plymouth Roadrunner. Okay? Those are the Plymouths. Now let's get into the Dodges. Okay? He had a 32 Dodge, a 62 Polara 500, a 62 Polara, a 62 Dodge Dart 440, a 67 A600 truck, 68 Polara convertible, 68 Dodge Dart GT, 69 Coronet 500, 69 Coronet 440, 70 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi, non-original sunroof car, 3 1970 Dodge Challengers, a 1971 Dodge Demon, a 72 Dodge Charger, a 73 Dodge Charger, 3 1980 Dodge Muratas, 4 89 Dodge Dakota convertibles, 4 of them, a 92 Dodge Stealth, 4 96 to 1999 Dodge Vipers, a 97 Dodge Dakota, a 98 Dodge Neon RT, 2 98 Dodge Stratuses, a 2009 Dodge Challenger RT with like 14,000 with 14 original miles on it. This thing was brand new. He must have drove it home or had it delivered to his house, okay, and never drove it again. 2 Dodge Vans, 3 Dodge Rampages, One of them was a race car. It just needed an engine and transmission, but it was all tubbed out in the rear. It was bad. I love that thing. 3 Dodge Rams. One was a 1500 and one was a Laramie SLT. One of them was a single cab dually, which I thought was awesome. I think those things are awesome. There was a Dodge Grand Caravan, a Dodge Dakota, and like a hot rod Dodge Coupe, like a race car type thing. But that's just an idea of the cars that he had. He had more cars of various makes and models, but he had a lot of Mopar stuff. Now, the parts, you go to this property and everything. When Tom from Rocket Restorations took over the auction and organized it, the amount of work that man had to go through to get everything. I mean, he had help, of course, but I couldn't imagine doing it. There was so much stuff. I mean, you're talking thousands of parts. So many parts that there were lots where it was just a bunch of parts in a box. You know what I mean? So it was like grab bag, surprise. But I get there and I'm just going through all these buildings and there's just parts lined up. And those guys did a great job of organizing it. But I've never seen anything like that in my life. You go into one building and it's all engines on the ground, wheels up above, intakes on one wall, carbs, and on the ground there's nothing but center sections. I called it the pumpkin patch. There was a little pumpkin patch of just center sections. That he had Hemis, he had 440s, 318s, 340s. I mean, 360s. You could probably just name something and he probably had it somewhere in there. You know what I mean? It was insane. Now, I've posted some pictures of this thing before, but I'm going to have to post the pictures again because every time I do, somebody's like, where is this? When is this? And I'm like, dude, it happened 3 years ago. But that's how crazy this auction was. It was nuts. I don't think I'm ever going to see anything quite of that magnitude again. It was definitely an experience, one that I will never forget. And you're probably wondering, well, you went down there with a few $100. Did you get anything? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. As I was walking around, I'm looking at stuff that, catches my eye that I might be in the ballpark to buy. And one thing stood out to me. And I knew as soon as I saw it that, it spoke to me. In a weird way, it was like that was the part that I needed to buy because I couldn't afford any of the cars. But what I saw was a Coyote Duster air cleaner lid for a Hemi. Now, I'm looking at that thing, and there was 2 of them. One was kind of burnt up or just, thinking about it, I don't know if it was burnt up or just rusty or just out of shape. But whatever the case, the one that I was looking at was lot number 3, and it was in a lot better shape than the other one, than lot number 4. Okay, I saw this thing posted up on one of the pillars in one of the buildings, and I was like, I'm bidding on this thing. If nothing else, it would be awesome wall art and a souvenir from the craziest auction I'm probably ever going to attend in my life. Will it ever go on a car? I don't know. But to make a long story short, I participated in my first auction, and I got into a little miniature bidding war. I won, but it cost me $300. I paid $300 for a Coyote Duster air cleaner lid off of a Hemi, which is fine. I'm cool with that. Because, like I said, it's a memory that I'll never forget. I'll never forget that auction. You have to see the pictures. If you go onto Google and you just type in Ben Snobar Collection, you'll see all sorts of media about it. Read up on it. See how crazy it was. Up until that point, I had never seen anything like that in my life. And as I was walking around, I was just like, man, I don't have enough money. Because there's so much stuff I wanted. There was a couple cool race cars, and I really liked the 71 Demon. Non-street legal car. It was a straight race car. That's what it was. But there was a few cars there that were cool. Every Viper I thought was cool. One of them went for $6,500, but it had some title issues. The 70 Charger RT 426 Hemi non-real, non-legit sunroof car went for like almost $60,000. It went for like mid-50s or mid to high 50s. And I thought that was crazy because everybody was losing their mind over this car because it was a Hemi sunroof car, but it turns out it wasn't a real original sunroof car. That car is kind of controversial, but cool car nonetheless. It is a Hemi Charger, a real Hemi Charger. So that's cool. But the auction was just insane, guys. The amount of parts, and you don't really, when I know a lot of people criticize the big auctions when you see these cars, and a lot of people are like, oh, these people are, paying way too much, blah, blah, blah. I understand how they can do it. The drinks start flowing. Now, there was no drinks at this auction that I knew of anyway, but I know at the other auctions, I see a lot of beers in people's hands, but, they get a little sauced up and they got some money and they want to, spend some money. But I can see how people get carried away in these things because you get in this little bidding war and you don't want to lose, and you get a little sauced up and you really don't want to lose. So I can see how these cars at these bigger auctions, how they hammer for higher prices than they probably should, which, it's the nature of the beast. But I could see how, because as soon as I started bidding on that thing, because it's like they start really low. And then, of course, you're like, what? I can have that for $10? You're like, here. And, the price is, it's like real quick that it starts climbing really fast. And before I knew it, 300, and I was like, gosh, I'm tapped out at 300. I'm not trying to spend more than that on this thing. So I just prayed that the guy didn't want it more than I did. So I won that one. And then I got greedy because I did bring a little extra money just in case there was something I had to have. And I got greedy and I was like, I'm getting the other one too. And then I backed off. I was like, no, I'm not even going to try. So I'm trying to remember if I actually saw the air cleaner lid on the catalog online and said, oh, I'm going to go get that. And then when I went there and saw it in person, I was like, I'm definitely bidding on this. I think that's how it went. But I was so in shock and awe of this entire collection that, because you have to understand, Ben collected this throughout his life. But there was so much stuff. I'm just like, you had to have gone to swap meets with, a truck or a van or a box van and just, dumped a bunch of money at all those swap meets to collect that amount of stuff. Because he had 8 3/4. I mean, he had more 8 3/4 rear ends than probably all of Craigslist. If you took every Chrysler 8 3/4 rear end on Craigslist, you still wouldn't have the same amount as Ben Snobar's collection had. So I don't know if that's true. I'm just pontificating. But the auction was awesome. I've posted some pictures before. I'll post some more pictures again. And, like I said, Google it. Google Ben Snobar, Snobar collection, and look at the pictures. It's crazy. It's nuts. At least I think it was. The only other auction that I can think of that was quite as cool and, cooler in many ways, but we won't go there. Different levels of stuff was the Steve Giuliano collection. That was if I could have went to that auction, man, I would have had to have brought something home from that place, because that was just, how many collections still exist out there like that? And I've actually made it a point to set some money aside for situations like that. So if I ever get a chance to go to another auction like that, like the Ben Snobar auction, I'd like to leave with the car next time, because there was a couple good deals that were had at that auction. If you go on James G. Murphy, the auctioneer website, you can sign up and then you can look at past auctions and you can go see what every single one of those cars went for at the Snobar auction. And some of them would surprise you. But I just thought I'd share a little bit of that story and share my experience. I could probably go on for another 2 hours on it, but let me just say this. There was so many parts, I didn't even know where to begin. So many of the same parts. He had a wall of headers. He had air cleaners hanging from the rafters. He had fenders on a wall. He had hoods, bumpers, gauge clusters, grills. I wonder how many cars you could build with all the parts he had. Now that I think about it, with all the cars that he had, and a lot of them needing parts, you could build probably several cars, or get several cars, in better shape. But it was just remarkable, and I'm glad I got to take part in it. It's always sad when somebody in the Mopar community that is spoken well of passes away. And I looked at the auction more of a celebration of life. People were in good moods, just loving the atmosphere of things we all love, car stuff. You know what I mean? It was like, this is what I equate the Ben Snobar auction to. If you're a Mopar guy like I am, and you go to just a general swap meet, okay, just an automotive swap meet, you have to wade through all the BS before you get to the good stuff. At least, I like looking, don't get me wrong, but I'm there for one reason, and that's Mopar parts, okay? So when I'm going through these swap meets, not everybody marks all their stuff. So you got to sit there for 20 minutes. And, if you're like me, you're a little OCD. So if you step into somebody's booth, you want to make sure you go through everything they have, and you got to look and make sure you're not missing anything that maybe is a Mopar part or Mopar related. So that's what gets me at the swap meets. But this was like taking all the good swap meets, taking all the Mopar parts and just throwing them in one place. That's what it was like, because everything was, you'd have to look really hard to find something not Mopar, unless you were looking at some of the cars. But I think about it a lot. Maybe I'm crazy, but I keep thinking back and I'm like, God, that was nuts. I think about it at least a couple times a week, how crazy that auction was. I guess I just can't let the past go or something. Maybe I have some, deep-seated regrets about not bringing enough money to buy a car. But, a couple of those cars went cheap enough. I could have bought one of the Dakotas. They were cheap, man. I think one of them went for like $400 or $500. Don't quote me on that. Sign up at the auctioneer website to look at the actual catalog and what these hammer prices went for. But, yeah, you could have gotten, if you had $2,000, you could have walked out of there with a nice muscle car. Okay, I take that back. Maybe not nice. Restorable. A good carcass. You could have walked out of there with a good carcass. And, if you're addicted to project cars like I am, thank God I don't have more money and a lot of property. Do you know how many project cars I'd have? I'd be drowning in project cars. I'm that guy. So, the powers that be, put me in the position to not have that stuff right now. And it's good because it gives me time to think about what I should do with what I have. And that's a good thing. But like I said, check out the Ben Snobar Collection, and keep in mind that it's over. Every time I post pictures of this place, everybody's like, when is it? When is it? It's over. It's over, folks. You missed out. But you can still enjoy the pictures. And like I said, if you go on James G. Murphy's website, the auctioneer, you can sign up and you can see the catalog, and you can see all the hammer prices on all the parts and all the cars. Some of it's pretty crazy. I think it'll blow your mind. But that's all I have to really say about the Ben Snobar Collection. If you know of any crazy Mopar collections out there, private or public, it'd be cool to hear about them. So you can leave the property owners anonymous and the locations anonymous, but I would love to hear stories about awesome collections that you've run across. If you remember Blake from DIY Hemi, his story about that collection that he ran into, wing car and all, that's, a butterscotch A12. Like, collections like that, they're still out there, folks. They are still out there. How crazy is that? That's crazy to me. But, I want to hear about these. I don't have to go. I don't have the money to play around in those things yet. But I love hearing cool Mopar stories. I love hearing those crazy, finds and things like that. So feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me, chris@talkingmopars.com, or call in the story. That would be fun too. You can call my voicemail and leave a message at 209-28-MOPAR. But that's it for the Ben Snobar auction, guys. Go take a look. Take a look at some of the pictures I posted in the past. I'll post them again. Take a gander. It's crazy, guys. It's nuts. But I'm thankful that I got to be a part of it, and hopefully I get to be a part of another cool auction like that in the future, and hopefully next time I'll be ready. That's it. The Ben Snobar Collection. I attended, and I actually bought something. That's all, folks. Another episode of Talking Mopars is in the books. For more information about this podcast or to listen and subscribe to the show, please visit TalkingMopars.com. And don't forget that you can send me your stories, questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, and everything else on your Mopar-addicted mind to Chris@TalkingMopars.com, or leave me a voice message on my voicemail box at 209-28-MOPAR to hear yourself on the show. Also, don't forget that if you like this show and you'd like to help support it, you can help me by visiting the Talking Mopars merch shop. You can purchase cool things like t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, mugs, and more. Ordering from the merch shop is a great way to help the show and get something cool in return. Just follow the link in the show notes or episode description, or just jump on over to TalkingMopars.com. That's it, my friends. Until we talk again, I am your host, Chris Albrecht, and that was Talking Mopars.
Thank you for listening to Talking Mopars, your direct connection to all things Mopar. Until next time, remember, no Mopar left behind.